Hello and welcome to LSC Focus. Liverpool are facing their biggest game of the season so far, and possibly their biggest game maybe for a few years now, in terms of how it could shape the season ahead with the visit of Manchester City at Anfield on Sunday afternoon. It's the first maybe real test of where the teams are in the title race. Maybe you had Chelsea and Liverpool last week, but I feel like this is an absolutely massive game for Liverpool's title race ambitions, simply because, you know, it's not necessarily that losing to City and being 3 points behind would be the be all and end all. You know, that's not by no means an unassailable lead or anything like that, but I think it really is a test of Liverpool's character and what they can achieve as a team this season, because we've seen in the past when we've talked about Liverpool title challenges that when things start to go wrong, the season unravels incredibly quickly. I think the clearest example of it was probably 2016-17, where up until around about the start of January, Liverpool was still being talked about as title contenders. I mean, we were about 5 points behind Chelsea at that point, but it wasn't until we started to just rack up some really poor results. You know, you had the Swansea game, you had us getting kicked out of both domestic cups within the space of a few weeks, you had another few poor results. There was a draw at Anfield against Chelsea, which we really should have won as well, and things just got completely derailed very, very quickly, and it even carried on into February as well, with poor results against Hull City and Leicester. And when you look at what happened for Liverpool against Napoli on Wednesday night, if we go away and win against Man City on Sunday, then that Napoli game isn't forgotten, but it's almost brushed aside. If we then lose to Man City, that Napoli game is starting to be talked about as the moment when our season started to derail. So it's really important that Liverpool basically just put our season back on track and make sure we go into this international break with a positive mindset rather than a negative one. And, you know, also going into it either a level on points with Man City or 3 points ahead of Man City and 2 points ahead of Chelsea would be absolutely massive. And, you know, City have made a hell of a fuss about this game already, as they always seem to do. I don't think they realise how much they seem to get in their own heads when it comes to trips to Anfield. There has, of course, been the bus fuss once again. There's all this talk of them taking a secret route. I mean, I don't know how secret it can be when it's a massive bus that says Manchester City all over it, and, you know, everyone knows where they're going. They're all going to Anfield, and there's only a finite amount of ways you can get into the stadium, so probably not going to be the most secret undercover route unless they're being helicoptered in or anything ridiculous like that, because, you know, the Copperberg thing, I don't think we can quite reach that far in terms of hurling cider bottles at helicopters or anything like that, but they're taking a secret route. They've got these 4K Ultra HD cameras on the side of the bus and everything ridiculous like that, and to be honest, all it really does is fire those Liverpool fans up more, and I think it gets into City's own players' heads, because they do start to think, oh God, are we going to be like when we last played at Anfield? Is it going to be the same as that? Are we going to get pummeled 3-0 where we completely fall apart in the first half hour, anything like that? So they really just don't do themselves any favours, especially when we already know that they have a problem playing at Anfield. We already know that Guardiola has a problem coming up against Jurgen Klopp. They should be doing all they can to say that we're not fussed about this game. They should be doing all they can to say that they actually feel confident. But every time we play City, everything they do beforehand and all the media that they put out basically says that they are terrified of playing against Liverpool. And, you know, I'm not surprised, because when it comes to playing them at Anfield, we always tend to absolutely batter them. And here's hoping for something similar. And obviously, 3 points clear of City and 2 points clear at the top would be absolutely massive, especially when you think about it being the international break. It sort of gives everyone a little bit of time to reflect. It gives Liverpool a bit of time to recover after what has been a slightly rocky patch. You know, whatever happens against Man City at the weekend, this still hasn't been the ideal run of results, with the draw against Chelsea, the loss in the League Cup, the loss against Napoli as well. It's not been perfect for Liverpool, and the club will want to reassess where we are and kind of work out what went wrong in those games when things didn't quite go to plan. And also, after the international break, our fixtures do get a hell of a lot easier. You know, we haven't got all these tough away trips to Chelsea and to Tottenham. We haven't got difficult aways against Napoli or home games against PSG. It's all Champions League games against Red Star and mostly Premier League games against bottom half of the league fodder. So if Liverpool can go into that run of fixtures ahead of the pack already, that will be such a huge positive, because it just means that we've got that psychological edge, and hopefully we keep picking up points and those other teams will start to face difficult fixtures where they will fall away away. So this is, of course, the biggest game of the season so far. It's absolutely massive, and the kind that we don't necessarily need to win. I think, I wouldn't take a draw because I'd always back Liverpool to win, especially against Manchester City at Anfield. But a draw at the end of the day would not be the worst result by any means. And if you ask me, the aim really is probably to avoid defeat, because that would not be ideal under the circumstances. But moving on to team news going into the game, the obvious talk has been all about Naby Keita and what happened to him in the game against Napoli. It did look serious at first when he was stretchered off on a little golf buggy thing. Mad Italian thing, don't really get it, but fair enough. I feel like you should just carry the stretcher, but whatever, it looks funny when they get golf buggied off the pitch. But yeah, he got sent to hospital after the game, and it turns out he's pretty much fine. It was a little bit of a scare with back pain and with heart problems. Apparently everything is nowhere near as bad as it seemed, and he will potentially be available for the game against City, but Jurgen Klopp in his press conference today did say that it's something they are going to have to keep an eye on, and we're not entirely sure whether or not he will actually be available for this game, because obviously with the fact that he went to hospital and there'll be all sorts of precautions taken, it probably means that he either hasn't trained or has trained very lightly, and that's always a concern because these are very high tempo games against City, and you don't want to throw players in half-baked. You want players who are physically at their peak and ready to take on what will be a really intense match, and there is a question mark over whether Naby Keita will be at the right level in terms of his physical fitness going into this game. But apart from that, no real injury news, although I think it's certainly interesting when you think about how exhausted a lot of the players looked against Napoli. Certainly I think the midfielders, I think Milner looked knackered, I think Gini Van Alden looked off his best, Jordan Henderson looks like he's starting to struggle, and I think some of that is due to the lack of pre-season that he had and how he has sort of not been thrown into the side, because I think we managed him fairly well, but he's still quite not at peak fitness, so I think he's been used ever so slightly more than Jurgen Klopp would have liked. Obviously, he gets brought on at Napoli a lot earlier than I think Klopp would have wanted to bring him on, so that maybe explains why he was a bit tired towards the end of that game. But it's not something we want to do. We obviously want to put out our first choice team for this game, but it is entirely possible that Jurgen Klopp will have no choice to rotate, especially when he thinks about what players will feature heavily in the international break and what players won't. But as for the starting 11 that I think we will put out, I think Alisson in goal, no question marks there. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold has looked a little bit tired, but it's unlikely he will play both games of the international break, so I think we can just about squeeze him in for this game. Then the centre-back pairing, it's got to be Gomez and Virgil van Dijk. No signs of fatigue from either of those players. They have been absolutely class, and they really do look like a title-winning centre-back pairing. I was thinking about this and the centre-back pairing we had with Lovren and Van Dijk last season, and I think they were very much a cup tournament centre-back pairing, because Lovren's always got a clanger in him, but he's also got a few absolutely fantastic performances, and to win a cup you only need about 5 amazing performances per season, and Lovren was capable of delivering those when it mattered. But over the course of a 38-game season, he's always going to do something to let you down, whereas with Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, they are so consistent. They deliver week in, week out in every single game they play, and whenever one of them isn't quite playing to the best of their ability, the other one always steps in to bail them out whenever they need it. So they are an absolutely fantastic centre-back pairing, and I'm really excited to see, whether City can even get past them, because I would actually not be entirely surprised if Liverpool kept a clean sheet this weekend. And then at left-back, you've got to go with Andrew Robertson. There are questions about his fitness, especially with the international break coming up. He is Scottish captain, so he's probably going to play the full 90 in, I think, probably both of their games. Most teams do play 2 games in the international break, which isn't ideal, but I just think, Moreno, no takers on that whatsoever for the game at the weekend. And then the midfield, this is where you'd want to see rotation. This is where a lot of players do look tired, but I just can't see it happening, because I think, Jordan Henderson has to play in the number 6 because Fabinho is just not quite ready. I then think you've got to play Gini and you've got to play Milner ahead of him, because there's that whole problem about Naby Keita and whether or not he will be fully fit. And also, I'm not entirely sure Jurgen Klopp trusts him in this kind of game yet. Against Napoli, he was giving the ball away a lot in midfield, and City will pounce on that and they will look to capitalise on that to maximum effect. And also, with how much attacking City are going to do, we don't necessarily need someone who's going to break the lines as much. Obviously, it's ideal, and I think if we had someone like Oxlade-Chamberlain available, you definitely play him. But I don't think Naby Keita is quite at the level yet where he is undroppable for Liverpool. And I think for this kind of game and the level that he's performing at the moment and how well he's adjusted to Liverpool's system in the Premier League, it's a little bit too early to throw him into a game of this magnitude. So even though Milner looks tired, even though Jean looks tired, even though Henderson looks tired, you know, all of them aren't at peak fitness. You just got to hope that they've got one more massive performance in them before the international break. And if there's one time all season to deliver it, it is against Manchester City at home. And then the front three, you can't change any of them. You know, Salah, Firmino and Mane. Can't really criticise any of them for the games they had against Napoli. I think I was quite worried about how little chances they were getting, but a lot of that was to do with the service from the midfield. So it's up to the midfield to step up and have the confidence and the bravery to take the ball, run with it, and try and pick out passes to our front three and take the risks and move the play forward a little bit. And hopefully those front three players will start to find their shooting boots. We'll start to link up as well, because if they do, then we will see the kind of mauling that we've seen against Manchester City in the past. So taking a look at Manchester City then, and they've got a few injury problems of their own, and one of them is incredibly interesting because they do have a big problem at left back. There are big question marks over whether Benjamin Mendy will be fit. Pep Guardiola has been kind of playing it down and saying, you know, we'll see, we're not entirely sure yet, but he certainly doesn't sound confident about it. And it's similar to this issue around Naby Keita, where I feel like even if a player is fit for the game, if they haven't had multiple training sessions beforehand, it's certainly a risky move to throw them back in, especially given that Ben Mendy has been out for not a while, but he's been out for several weeks now, and that is an incredibly long time in football, even for a player like one at Manchester City, where I'm sure they will put so much work into making sure they are ready and fit to play as soon as possible. I mean, you only have to look at De Bruyne to see how quickly they are capable of bringing back players from injury with their modern training techniques. I mean, there's still some question marks over how exactly they get their players back that quickly, but you know, I'll try and avoid a lawsuit and I won't make any allegations just yet or anything like that. But yeah, there are question marks about Ben Mendy. Fabian Delph is definitely injured, and he is usually their backup left back, so that leaves them in the rather uncomfortable position of probably having to play Aymeric Laporte in that position. And apparently he has only ever played in that position twice for Man City. One of them was against Wolves earlier on in the season, where he did okay. The other one was at Anfield last season, where we beat them 3-0, and he ended up getting hooked early on in the second half. So I think that tells you all you need to know about how comfortable Aymeric Laporte will be playing left back up against players like Mohamed Salah and Roberto Firmino and Trent Alexander-Arnold at Anfield. The short answer is he is not comfortable at all. The only other option City have is Alexander Zinchenko, who isn't really, you know, up to standard yet. I mean, to be honest, he's not even a left back. He is a midfielder by trade, so he'd be playing out of position, and he's incredibly young as well. So I certainly don't think Pep Guardiola would want to do that. The safe bet really for him is probably to play Laporte at left back. He could also go for a back three, but there is a huge body of evidence to suggest that playing a back three against Liverpool's attack is a really, really bad move. So he's in a bit of a corner there, Pep Guardiola, and I think whatever he does is going to cause him a few problems, and it's really up to Liverpool to make sure that we capitalise on that. And if they do play Laporte, then it's an absolutely massive opportunity for Mohamed Salah to finally show what he's all about this season and prove the doubters wrong and show that there are no problems with his form whatsoever. And I think the other interesting thing to consider about Man City is they've had it pretty easy this season. I mean, I don't know how many of you have seen this thing on Twitter, but it basically assesses how difficult teams' fixtures have been so far by looking at the table and saying Huddersfield, because they're bottom of the table, that's a 1-point difficulty fixture. Man City are top, so if you play Man City, that's a 20-point difficulty fixture. And when you take the three teams that have been in the title race, Man City have a difficulty fixture point thingy of 45. Chelsea's is 60. Liverpool's is 75. So we have by far and away had the most difficult start to the season. And when you think about the teams that Man City have played, they played Arsenal on opening day, and Arsenal just weren't really a fully formed side there. I think it's fair to say it was a pretty easy game for Manchester City. They also played Chelsea in the Community Shield, and Chelsea, another side who hadn't really got going by that point. And then the other 6 teams that City have played in the league have been the 3 promoted teams, and the 3 teams that were promoted to the Premier League last season. It's not exactly Tottenham away or Chelsea away or Palace away or Leicester away or anything like that. It's nowhere near the kind of difficult fixtures that Liverpool have had to deal with so far this season. So I think that's going to potentially cause a problem for City in terms of whether or not they're capable of stepping up their performance levels to deal with a game of this intensity. I think the only game that really matches this intensity, or at least gets close to it so far this season, was the one against Lyon in the Champions League, and City really struggled in that match. And it was certainly interesting to see Lyon employ the kind of similar tactics that Liverpool do against City. You know, they did sit off. They allowed City to have the ball. They said, come and and get us, come out and play and leave those spaces open. And when they needed to do it, Lyon pressed the ball really well. They counter-attacked and they came away with the win, and they actually made City look a bit stupid at various points in that game. And that is something that Liverpool are capable of doing at their absolute best against Manchester City. So the most important thing for me in this game is that we just play our usual game. We don't look at this and worry about the Napoli result or worry about what's happened so far this season. We don't get in our own heads too much, and we just basically say we know what we're doing against Man City. We know how to beat these, especially at Anfield, and they will be worried sick already. So as long as Liverpool just go out and do the usual business, as long as they just take this game, not in their stride, but they take this game as something that they know they can win, then I feel like we probably will be absolutely fine, and we should not just get the 3 points, but there's every chance we could actually smash City once again and make it 4 wins in a row against them. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then why not give it a like? If you're new around here as well, then hit that subscribe button there. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back on Sunday evening after we've hopefully smashed Man City and gone clear at the top of the Premier League table. Until then, bye for now.